So in terms of its energetics, because it is so warming and because it is bitter, we will see that it, or because it, I guess I just kind of gave it away. It's considered a warming plant in terms of its influence on temperature. And you know, this might vary from plant to plant. Like if you have a hyssop that doesn't taste that aromatic and is just like, whoa, really, really bitter, that particular plant might be more on the cooling side. If you get some that are more pungent and aromatic, then that might be more on the warming side. But generally speaking, we tend to consider hyssop to be a warming plant. So treating cold type issues in the body. So again, and I know that kind of seems counterintuitive. It's like, oh wait, I thought you said it was for a fever. Well, the fever is the body's natural response to the presence of a pathogen. And if we think of depression, like depression in the tissues, like when the liver is stuck and stagnant and it's not able to process things as well, it's considered depressed. It's not doing its job. When digestion is not functioning optimally, we have digestive depression. When the lungs can't expectorate and do their job, we have lung depression. So as a stimulant, this plant is warming and stimulating these tissues into a greater level of activity. And so it's really great for cold patterns in the body. But yet we see all these indications for inflammations. So it's almost like inflammation that arises due to cold. And I know that sounds kind of paradoxical, like, well, how can you be hot and cold at the same time? Well, if you think of like the progression of something, if you have cold in the body in its vital wisdom responds to that. And it might respond to that by creating inflammation, by trying to move that stagnation, move and disperse that depressed tissue or organ. And so you get this heat response due to cold. And that's where hyssop is going to be really, really specific there. So it's going to warm and stimulate the depressed tissue state underneath it, and on the surface help with the heat patterns that are arising due to that vital response of the cold. So warming, and then in the long-term effect, we're going to see it typically having more of a drying effect as a pungent plant, as a bitter plant. These are all secretions leaving the body in the long term, but in the short term, again, we will see it having, because it's increasing secretions. So like in the lungs, it's great for a dry cough in the short term, but if you're taking hyssop every day for months and months and months, you know, it's promoting sweating, it's promoting diuresis, it's promoting digestive secretions. These are all fluids leaving the body, which will ultimately in the long run have a net drying effect. And, you know, I think that's a really important distinction and way to think about and understand plants, is the importance of looking at a plant in terms of there's kind of two different polarities that I think of. Is you have the local effect on a tissue or an organ in contrast to its constitutional effect on the whole body. So locally in the lungs, it's increasing a secretion, but those secretions ultimately leave the body and will in the long run have more of a drying effect. So local versus constitutional, and then short-term versus long-term effects. So again, short-term, you take a bitter, it increases digestive secretions. That's technically a moistening effect. But in the longer term, if those fluids leave the body, in the long run, you're left more dry. So I think this is one of the ways that we can actually kind of start to understand why, when you're looking up energetics of herbs in different resources and books, you can sometimes see conflicting information. Some people say it's moistening, some people say it's drying. It's like, what the hell are you supposed to do with that, right? It's super confusing. Well, one author might be looking at, they might say hyssop is moistening, and they say, well, it's moistening because it treats a dry cough. Well, that's looking at a local short-term effect. It's true. Another author might say, hyssop is drying. That might be because they're looking at the whole constitutional picture over the long term, which is that it's diuretic, it's bitter tonic, it's diaphoretic. These are all fluids leaving the body, therefore it's drying. So this is one way that I'm always thinking about plants, especially when I see contradictory information. Typically, that's if you start to put those factors into play, like you start thinking about those factors, all of a sudden it starts to make a little bit more sense why you might see those conflicting information. So, and then, so warming, drying long-term, slightly moistening short-term, dry cough and things like that. And then we will see it having a stimulant effect as well. It's not overly tonic or astringent, nor is it overly relaxant. This is not one of our nervine mints. So it's really really much more oriented in respiration and fever and things like that. So